Welcome back folks, my name's Shane. In today's video we're going to talk about the original Panasonic Lumix S5. Not the S5 Mark II or the S5 Mark IIX, the original S5. We're going to find out whether or not it's still worth it in 2023. Before we get into it, just know this video is not sponsored. I purchased 4 Panasonic S5s over the course of about 2 years to upgrade my Micro Four Thirds multi-camera setup over to full frame. The reason I got 4, it's a lot easier to match cameras, white balance, and all that kind of stuff using exactly the same camera. This video comes from thousands of hours of use time with these cameras. I've shot hundreds of videos in a multi-camera setup on my In the Blues YouTube channel, and I've also taken these cameras both interstate, locally, and overseas to shoot some of my shows that I showcase on my other channel. So this comes from a lot of hands-on experience. We're going to talk about the pros and cons and what I like and dislike about these cameras the most. The first reason to still get a Panasonic S5 in 2023 is its price. You can get these new on B&H for $14.95, whereas the S5 Mark II comes in at $1,995 plus tax, right? So you're going to get a far cheaper camera with the original S5. And now that the new camera is out, a lot of people will be selling these for a bargain. I've seen them on eBay for as low as $900 US, which is insane considering the kind of image quality you can get out of this camera. Let's talk about the pros and cons of the video image quality on the Panasonic S5, because even in 2023, this camera holds its own with far more expensive cameras. I own a Sony FX3 and A7S III, and the image coming out of this using the full sensor readout is every bit as good, except the color science on the Lumix looks better to my eye, and I much prefer grading with Vlog over S-Log3. The biggest image quality compromise between the original S5 and the Sony FX3 is that the S5 will crop in at 4K 50 and 60 frames per second, and this is a deal breaker for some people, but for me, or if you plan on shooting a short film, for example, where you'll just be shooting in 24, 25 or 30 frames per second, for example, the image quality out of this camera looks every bit as good as the FX3. If you plan on shooting in 4K 50 or 60 uncropped, then you'll need to get a much more expensive camera. One of the things I love about the Panasonic S5 is that I've never had it overheat in any shooting scenario. I know some people were able to get this camera to overheat by putting it in an incubator. I think that was Potato Jet, by the way, but I've never had this overheat. I've shot with these cameras for 10 hours in a single day. That's right, I leave them hooked up to external monitors in my YouTube studio and I let them run, and I'm recording internally. I've never had any issues with overheating. Most Panasonic cameras don't overheat, which is fantastic, especially once you start getting up into their prosumer or professional line. If you're at all concerned with overheating, I've never had a single problem with any of my Panasonic S5s. By the way, never buy a camera that has issues with overheating. Don't reward companies that produce junk. The original Panasonic S5 has a dual native ISO of 640 and 4000. It makes it a really great low light camera. I got better results out of this than my previous Sony A7C, and additionally we also get 10-bit codecs to work with. Now there are 30-minute limits when you're recording movies in 4K 10-bit. We get that 30-minute cap, but if you want to shoot 8-bit like I do in the studio, you can let these cameras run all day. The next thing I love about the Lumix S5 is its audio quality. We get a 3.5mm audio input that works great with wireless packs or shotgun microphones, and we can still connect it up to the DMW XLR audio adapter from Panasonic, which gives me some of the best in-studio results. So if you need to run a professional shotgun microphone, you can get that DMW XLR adapter, and it works a treat, and it's not overly expensive, which is awesome. Now the S5 doesn't have 4 channels of audio like the new S5 Mark II, so just keep that in mind. Oh, the sun's out again. The video is going to be all over the place with the lighting. While the sun's out, let's talk about the IBIS or in-body image stabilization. Now the IBIS in this camera is a little bit of a mixed bag. The IS boost mode, which gives you an almost tripod looking shot handheld, is fantastic. And the S5 Mark II doesn't really make that much better than this original S5. But where you will see a difference is with the active IS technology on the S5 Mark II. But that said, you can still get decent handheld results with the S5, far superior results than with my Sony FX30 or FX3. So this will still give you better IBIS technology, but it's not as good as the latest technology. But again, shooting handheld with this is absolutely capable. Let's answer the question, should you buy a Panasonic S5 in 2023? I think it's still a very viable option, unless of course you need the best in autofocus performance, and this is where this camera really has an Achilles heel. I can live with a micro HDMI port, but I hate going back to the park the next day to reshoot scenes if something was completely out of focus. And I've taken that risk today with this camera out here in the field, so you can get a good sense of how it performs. The image quality out of this camera is fantastic, and if you plan on shooting in manual focus like I would in the studio all of the time, then this is a really great choice. The lens lineup is fantastic now. The S series of primes are some of my favorite. It's a very consistent lens range, and they're all forwards and backwards compatible with the S5 and S5 Mark IIX. So if you get good glass, you can get good results with the S5. And again, every bit as good as much more expensive cameras on the market. The fact that we can get a sense of redundancy with the dual SD card slots, we get a full frame sensor, excellent low light performance, no overheating, and a great lens lineup makes this a really viable camera. I didn't even touch on the photography aspect, but you can do so much with this camera if you're into photography. It's a really great camera, even in 2023. If you want to find the best deals, I'll link them down in the description box below. Thanks for watching. Let us know what you think of the OG S5. I don't plan on getting rid of any of mine. Thanks for watching.